Two things come to mind. The first one is ideally we could make it a bit less stiff. It's still senior executives sitting there in suits and talking to a lineup of colleagues who, of course, speak to the number one in the organization, and the tone is usually very formal. I'd love to change that. And so far, we had the conversations moderated by an amazing colleague who is a senior advisor to Achim Steiner and a huge supporter of innovation. But we pushed for having another moderator or different moderators who come from different levels of the organization and also represent different age cohorts. And fortunately, that really resonated with the executive office. So just little tweaks in the tone. But more importantly, so far, the conversations, particularly the presentations from country offices, they do focus a lot on results. And that's not surprising. And that speaks to prove the comparative advantage of innovation. But I'd love more talk about processes, more talk about learning. We do think that in innovation, we got to think about scaling processes, not only solutions. And that is something that we have to work more closely with the country offices with. It's, of course, not easy in a short presentation talking about your results and the behind the scenes processes, how you are more iterative. But that's definitely an area where we need to improve in my perception. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Kaylee, do you have any insights on things that you are kind of thinking about changing in the next round of a failure report that might go out from the SDG Lab?
Yeah, I think I think we have not maybe labeled success or failures beside each other. I think that could be quite interesting to think about. Okay, what were our greatest successes and what were our greatest failures, and what does that tell us about the way that the initiative is moving forward? Because of course, most reporting to a funder is basically a big success report, and then we have this annex, the failure report. But I think if we were to compare maybe our top three of each, it would show something about where the organization is at the moment and how it's doing, especially since it's a new initiative. I also think, and this is just a little bit more, in a personal kind of day-to-day capacity, I think that it's a lot easier to look back at failures a couple months later or when things have settled, and it's a lot harder in the moment when things aren't going right. So maybe just practicing as a team, I'm not sure, this is something maybe we'll experiment with, but practice as a team how we can support each other through failures and say, this wasn't perfect, but we're going to learn from it. Versus, sometimes it just gets tense and stressful, and people aren't kind of asking the right questions about what's happening to alter course and be really agile, which is the hope, and why we actually do something like failure reporting. So I guess also the other thing I would change is maybe just trying some new methods or tools for being more responsive to failure in the moment, as opposed to just when it stings less in later time.